Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here. I thought I'd go ahead and do my regular comic book thoughts video, which I try to do every week, even though I was sort of accidentally ended up on Comic Book Roundtable with Travis, Oddfellow Thoughts, and it was just the two of us, and I did talk about everything I'd read this week, but I just wanted to do it in my regular format also. I know that I personally don't always watch, even though I often really like them, I don't always watch the really long live videos if I don't catch them live. So I didn't want to assume that everyone would be catching me there and I didn't have to do my regular video. Plus I enjoy doing this regular video and I might approach things differently than when I was talking to someone else. So I just wanted to give it a shot my regular way. It's funny or frustrating or whatever. Last week I loved everything I read. This week, out of 7 things I read, I maybe liked 2 of them. I mean, I didn't absolutely hate anything. I just felt kind of sketchy and incomplete and dissatisfied on some level or other with everything I read. And there's nothing I read here that I regret reading or felt was a waste of time or a rip-off of my money. But it just, compared to last week, it just kind of left me wanting. I was quite looking forward to FBP, Federal Bureau of Physics, once known as Collider. This sort of an arc had completed in the previous issue, our first sort of big adventure with localized physics gone wonky. And now this issue seems to be almost like a resting point where our hero Adam, whose last name I can't remember now, goes to visit his uncle who's been taking care of or minding the old trailer that's full of his father's stuff. And so most of it is a discussion between him and his uncle, and they sit around and smoke pot, and the uncle tells him about the last days of his father. We get kind of a flashback, and ultimately a mystery about some missing files. A lot of it, so it was okay. Where is this all going? Did I learn anything important here? I guess I did. It'd probably be important for later, but it didn't. It's not stuff that even is going to sink deeply into my head. I was very distracted by the fact that the uncle wears, I think, a turban. Does that mean that he's a Sikh? This group from India and Pakistan? Are they mostly from India or mostly from Pakistan? I don't even know. But from that general area. He doesn't obviously look of a East Indian origin. Are they supposed to be Arabs? Do Arabs wear turbans? I don't think they really do. Some Arabs wear Anyway, I don't know what that was supposed to signify. Is the whole family of some particular origin? And then the other thing is, this guy's wearing a turban, and basically I think what we learn is that he's a drug dealer. And they sit around and smoke pot, like I might drink a beer with a friend, and I know there are people who do that. But I don't know if that's supposed to tell me something about all this, or it's just supposed to be just part of the ambiance. Because we have a flashback to 26 years ago where a bunch of people are in Mexico but wearing turbans and smoking pot. Or does this have something to do with like Rastafarians? I was confused by all of that, but I felt like it was significant because there was so much of it in here. And yeah, so I feel like some kind of extra messages were going on here that I wasn't getting. There was a neat kind of physics tornado, but I'm not sure. It felt like more could have happened in this issue, more could have been done with the elements. And I'm still hanging on with FPB. There's a lot about it that intrigues me, and it's a $2.99 comic. but I'm feeling iffy on it. I'm just feeling sketchy on it. You could say with almost everything I bought this week, I did wonder at some point, should I remove it? Should I not get this regularly and get something else? I picked up Umbral, a #1 from Image, that is very cool in many ways. For starters, it must be like more than 30 pages of story. Very appealing art and coloring to me. I really like the font even, or whatever the lettering. It kind of worked really well for a fantasy book. And what this is a full-on fantasy novel type of comic book. You know, you got magicians and kings and queens and thieves and lost lands that we've never heard of, and a map and everything. But it, like the theme of today, it was something sketchy about it. There was stuff I didn't understand, and I reread it, and it didn't help rereading it. Rereading it emphasized to me that when the character, well, it started off really cool, and she's in something called the Umbral. I assume some magical place, magical realm, other dimension, something. And it looks really cool in this opening shot. But in the rest of the scenes that take place in the Umbral, let me see, I can't tell visually when she's in the Umbral because it looks pretty much like the rest of the world that she's in. So you right there, you've got that is kind of a sketchy thing where when are you in the Umbral and when aren't you? Should we have learned a little more about the Umbral in this first issue? Maybe, maybe not. There seemed to be, when I reread it, there seemed to be inconsistencies, like that she doesn't truck with magic, but she carries a magic thing around her neck. And then later she steals a very powerful magic jewel and she carries that around her neck. And the other thing that she carries around her neck seems to have disappeared, which was something she said she never lets go. I mean, there are all these elements that could make for a really fun fantasy, you know, long immersive fantasy story. But it's hard to tell from this issue whether they're going to do them well. And I have no experience with these authors, Anthony Johnson and Christopher Mitten, who are well known for their other comic book, The Wasteland. I've never read The Wasteland. I've never really heard anything about it. So I don't know if I can trust these people, whether I should continue buying it or if I should just say this first issue showed me that everything's too fuzzy, everything's too sketchy. I'm trying to think of other examples of sketchiness, but it was been a number of days now. Some people are killed in this issue, and some of them are brought back to life, or are all of them brought back to life? I'm not sure about that. I guess our character's not sure about that yet. Yeah. So, totally on the fence with this. I don't know whether I'll be picking it up again next month or not. I guess it depends on my mood, or maybe when I look at some previews of it. Coffin Hill, I think I will be continuing to get this, but and this issue felt okay. I wouldn't say it was sketchy like the other ones I've just talked about. Love the art, as I said the last time I reviewed this with Travis. And the story's fun. There's lots of interesting things about the character. This woman who's the member of a long line of witches, we find out in this issue, and may have killed some of her friends in a ritual as a 15-year-old girl, and then become a cop and solved a big crime, and now is maybe being kicked off the force. That's all from last issue, which was a bit sketchy in ways. This issue is more solid, focused on sort of some of her memories and background of being a coffin from Coffin Hill, and present day relationship with this guy who was kind of punky and gothy when they were 15, and now they're 25, I think, and he's the police chief of the town of Coffin Hill. And she kind of butts in on this murder or missing children's case that he's trying to solve, and believes that witchcraft is involved. It seemed a little more like a cop show, like one of those shows where you have like the weirder person helping out the straight cop, like Bones or like Castle or some other thing like that, where you've got the strange person who helps the regular person the regular cop solve the crimes. We'll see if it develops that way. It's a fun read. It's definitely it's worth picking up, but I don't feel wild enthusiasm for it. I don't go, oh, I love comic books because I'm reading this the way I did with everything last week. So let me borrow the problem there. Last of my non-superhero books is Shaolin Cowboy, and I guess I'm going to spoil this because I already spoiled it with Travis when we were talking on Comic Book Roundtable. I wasn't going to spoil it originally, and then Travis felt like there was nothing to spoil. It's kind of a one-joke issue that continues for 33 pages, and art as usual is beautiful, gory, cutting open of zombies in all kinds of creative ways, brains flying everywhere, hearts, the withered zombie parts, including the private parts, fully on display, because all the zombies in here are naked. Some have very interesting tattoos, etc. And the whole reason for getting, well, maybe there's two reasons for getting Shaolin Cowboy. If you love Jeff Darrow's art, which is why I was getting it, if you kind of like what can only be called kind of an avant-garde gross-out joke. So if you like comics that are kind of out there on the edge, doing weird things, not behaving the way comic books normally behave, you might get a big kick out of this. You can pick up issue 1. There's more story in issue 1 relative to this issue. Still, compared to most books, there's not much story in here. This is devoted to the single-minded pursuit of one sort of gory, gross-out joke. It's kind of cool, but I flipped through it, I was reading it, and I'm saying, oh, there we go. Oh, some more of that. Some more of that. And then after about 10 pages, I started flipping through the rest of the book, and I saw it was all a continuation of the same silent scene. And so I don't think I've looked at every page in here again. I have to admit I will probably come back a couple times and keep looking at it. There's interesting things on each page to look at. But it's not a comic book you actually read. It's a comic book you look at. Maybe a great work of art, maybe a great joke, or maybe a waste of people's money for some people. So at least that puts a smile on my face, but again, it was just part of the week's kind of letdown of not getting as much from the comic books as I'd hoped, particularly because of some really good weeks, and last week being a week where I just loved everything I read. SupermanWonder Woman is kind of cool. As I said to Travis, a lot of people hate the idea of Superman and Wonder Woman being a couple. I like it. I immediately think of all kinds of interesting plot lines you could have, both likely and unlikely, in terms of mainstream comics, exploring a relationship between two really superpowered characters, and not just, we've had kind of Elseworld things where, like Kingdom Come, where Superman and Wonder Woman have a relationship, but that's quickly glossed over. I think there could be something very interesting of following the beats of this relationship as it shifts and changes, and there's still some hope that it might go that way. I'm particularly hopeful because Charles Soule is the writer, and he has played things so well in Swamp Thing that I feel like maybe he can get his feet on this one. There's probably a lot more commercial pressures going on here. And he's working with, one of those kind of top DC mainstream artists, Tony Daniel, whose art is very nice to look at. There's some very nice coloring by, trying to notice colorists a lot, Tomu Mori. So it looks really nice. I think I really like a lot about Tony Daniel's style. I've heard some people really put him down, and I haven't really experienced him much in comic books. But the one thing I don't like is the kind of expressions and poses he actually does with Wonder Woman and Superman themselves. All the other characters are very interesting. Like here in this picture, we've got Superman kind of facing down Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, the god of volcanoes, also known as Vulcan in the Roman gods, a regular minor character in the Wonder Woman comics, and Hephaestus looks really cool to me. Superman just looks really kind of odd to me. So that's pretty. This picture is pretty symbolic of the problem. It feels like Wonder Woman and Superman are always just slightly pouting, and I can't do it justice in my old fat face, but maybe that shows you what I mean. So that seems like a weakness in a story that's supposed to be sort of, or in my mind is supposed to be about their relationship. This, on the other hand, this does make a really strong attempt to bring Superman into this kind of Greek mythos world that Wonder Woman in her current incarnation in her book inhabits. And so cheers to that. It still hasn't gelled quite. Brian Azzarello kind of owns these characters in the sense that he's created this incarnation of them, and so now his version of Apollo, his version of Hephaestus, and other gods that are no doubt going to show up are the one in my head that really works. And these are slightly different versions. Still, there was something somewhat cool about having Superman encounter these people, if you can call them people, and face them down. I hope there are consequences to the way he's faced them down and what happened, what went down here. I don't want to give it all away. I hope there are further consequences of that in his relationship with these Greek gods. Continues and deepens, I hope, rather than just being sloughed away. It's kind of odd because we had a brief appearance by Doomsday at the end of the last book and at the beginning of this. Then he just goes away and they discuss it slightly, and then they're off to see the Greek gods, and then we see that another Superman villain is showing up out of the blue on Earth yet again. So I guess they'll be fighting him next. So it's almost like we're throwing it's looking like we're throwing one villain after another at Superman and Wonder Woman without developing much of a plot. But I think I will buy at least one more issue because I still think Charles Soule might be up to something interesting. And then if he is up to something interesting, I probably still, once the first arc is over with, should switch to trades, because it was kind of an accident on my part to buy a $3.99 book. I'm really trying hard when things are $3.99 books to make them wait for trades, unless there's some exceptional reason, or perhaps if they're small press, or it's not small press, but smaller companies, as my next example will be. I do like these new thicker covers that DC is putting on their $3.99 books, so it feels like they're really going to last well. You can't damage the cover very easily, and it prints out the colors really nice. but they have at the same time, they used to, I think, do 27 or 28 pages in a $3.99 book. Now I think they're doing 22 to 23 pages in a $3.99 book and doing the nicer cover. Still a better deal than the $3.99 Marvels. I'm always worrying about money. Something in my personality. Even if I could spend all my money on $3.99 books, I wouldn't do it because of my personality. I just don't like being taken. Here is a $3.99 book. Also, not quite as thick cover stock. Thicker paper, very nice art. It is from IDW, and I don't buy too many IDWs because of that $3.99 price, or I'm reluctant to. But I'm I started this series. I started the series before this, which this is really a continuation of, which was John Byrne's Trio. When I first started it, I wasn't sensitive to the $3.99 price. But I'm kind of glad to support John Byrne doing independent work at this price, although Trio never quite lived up to its potential. But it seems like in this continuation of it, Triple Helix, which continues the plot of Trio, but adds in another group that's very reminiscent of the X-Men, who are called Triple Helix. Byrne is really upping his game. I think this is if things continue at the level of this issue, this is a really good old school superhero comic book. And Byrne's art really shows it. You can see on the cover is quite intense, and it's clearly John Byrne artwork, and it's done really well. I liked the art quite a bit in Trio, and I think it's even better here in Triple Helix. So you've got threads that he's been weaving since Trio, coming up and becoming more important and more intense. So you could probably, just the way you could read old 70s and 80s comics and just pick up what was going on pretty easily, you could probably pick these up and figure out what's going on well enough. And it's all, familiar superhero tropes from the Fantastic Four and X-Men anyway. But you might also be able to cheaply pick up the 5 issues of Trio, I think is all there were, and the first issue of Triple Helix. If you're in the mood for old school John Byrne, I think you're going to have a lot of fun reading these as they build up to this issue. And the payoff starts to be really good in this issue. So it really depends on how strong of a John Byrne fan you are. But this was probably my favorite book of the week, partially because for me, the books I picked up, it was a weak week for me, but partially because John Byrne is doing a good job here. Second favorite book of the week, I guess it's dumb to end on the second favorite, although it was very close, and they're very different, and maybe the John Byrne book, this issue of Triple Helix, was just completely satisfying to me. And actually, I read it first of everything I read because I thought it would just be light fluff and that it wouldn't be anywhere near my favorite. But after I read it, I had to stop. I started trying to read other things like Coffin Hill, and I had to kind of stop and wait a day for my palate to cleanse because everything else did not just have that nice, clear, straightforward, old-fashioned comic book feel. And of course, Astro City specializes, Astro City by Kurt Busiek and trouble reading, Brent Anderson, and with a lot of conceptual work by the cover artist, or traditionally anyway, it tends to have a lot of conceptual work added in by the cover artist, Alex Ross. He's kind of the three of them are kind of collaborators on creating this world of Astro City, which is always showing us a kind of traditional superhero world kind of turned at a whole different angle, often from the point of view of people who aren't superheroes, or people who've taken odd career superheroes. This time we're following this man who is a member of the mob in Astro City, helps run the unions, the longshoremen, I guess, and the shipping unions, and he ends up he has this kind of, his whole life he's been about going through doors. If a door opens, walk through it, and that's how he got involved with the mob. That's how he rose up in the mob, opening doors, and now he goes through the door into this alien's spacecraft that has been, or interdimensional craft that has been hovering over the waterfront of the city since issue 1 of this run of Astro City. And ultimately he gets access to some potential superpowers, and he makes some unusual choices about it. And it's a very satisfying issue. It doesn't, like many other Astro City issues, it's kind of like a side story that may or may not play out some more later. It does have potential to play out some more later. I kind of liked it, but maybe I don't know. This current Astro City run feels unfocused, and I was hoping that by this issue we'd be brought back to some focus, so there's that sketchiness feeling, and it really is because of the issue prior to this, which made almost no sense to me. I was hoping this issue would bring it into focus, but this issue doesn't in any clear way connect to the previous issue. It connects to issue 1 in the series. This is issue 6. A funny side note about Astro City is, at some point I couldn't figure out which issue was which. I didn't notice that every issue says Astro City 6 or Astro City 3 or something. And I had the first 3 issues, and I kept searching the cover for which one is issue 1, and finally just took the plunge. I'm pretty sure this issue is issue 1, and started reading it. But yeah, so it took me a long time to realize they just include the number as part of the title. And I guess the title can appear in different places on the cover. Alex Ross is, I don't know if he's doing this on everything he does now, but the Astro City covers have been much more complicated compositionally than what I've come to expect from Alex Ross covers. So it can take you time to figure out that you're looking up above at these characters fighting behind and above this this main character with the mustache. It's a really cool picture, but it kind of takes you time just to parse it all. And Sean Riaz was telling me that Alex Ross doesn't ever do anything digitally. It does look, I think Sean was telling me that, but it does look like all these lightning bolts are digital, but I guess they could be just painted in. It's a very cool cover, and I want to go. I would love some art of Alex Ross covers, really of his more recent work. I think it's more complicated. There's more to look at, etc. Some people complain about Brent Anderson's art. It's very kind of 80s and 90s, what I think of as post-Neil Adams artwork. He's clearly, someone who's been very influenced by Neil Adams. But I find he's doing a very good job. He did some issues of A Phantom Stranger a while ago that I thought were pretty weak, but I think he's putting his all into this. So I'll keep reading this, but I have certain hopes for it, and they may or may not be satisfied. So that's, I got 2 other books this week on past Wednesday, and they were to be read with my daughter, who decided that she doesn't want to read comic books all of a sudden. she's going through a personality change, so to speak, where, for instance, she's constantly angry at us for telling her to be careful. So we're getting a lot of pushback from her, and that's including, right now she's pushing back against my love of comic books. But we've actually went ahead and read some older comics that we'd read a while ago of Eric Schanauer's Wizard of Oz comics. Or actually his further adventures in Oz that usually involve Dorothy and other characters having adventures. Excellent stuff. So she doesn't really hate comics, but I guess we're not going to be reading My Little Pony and this Sergio Aragonés comic book that I bought this past week anytime soon. So I'll be talking to you all soon. Bye-bye.